Dan here again. In the tutorial Winning Proposal Themes Part 1, I talked about what themes are and where they come from. Now, in this tutorial, I'm going to talk about how you can capture the essence of a theme and then go through a process to convert it into a true winning proposal theme. Now, the name of this tutorial is very simple. It's Winning Proposal Themes Part 2, or How to Give the Customers What They Want. But first, as usual, let's take a look at what you'll learn in this video. I'll tell you the difference between what the customer needs and what he wants. Then I'll show you how to conduct a win strategy session during which you document all you know about your customer's hot buttons. Next, we'll talk about how to adapt your approach to meeting your customer's hot buttons. And finally, I'll show you how to develop winning proposal themes from win strategy session results. Ready? Okay, let's get going with the difference between what the customer needs versus what he wants. Now, we need to clarify these two words from the get-go, or we'll get confused downstream. In proposal world, the customer's needs equal RFP requirements. It's the problem he needs solved, and these needs are expressed in the RFP as the scope of work, the product spec, the schedule, terms and conditions, proposal format, etc. Everything in the RFP is a requirement. You must pay attention to every requirement and address those in your proposal as instructed. Okay, sure, some of the requirements of the RFP only apply to the project after you are selected, and you don't have to address them in the proposal, but they're still requirements, what the customer needs. What the customer wants, on the other hand, are the concerns and hot buttons he has about the job. These concerns may be details about the job that keep him up at night. And another way of looking at this is, what are his hopes, his fears, and his biases? What does he hope to see happen in this project? What is he afraid is going to happen? And who or what is he biased for or against? Let's talk about hope for a minute. On one proposal I managed, the customer would get federal funding if his project hit a certain milestone early. It wasn't a requirement for the project, and it wasn't in the RFP, but it's what he wanted to see happen, and we knew it. The team that proved they could deliver on that want would win the job. We managed to prove that we understood his concern, and we won the job. Okay, let's take a look at fear. What is he afraid might happen? On another proposal I worked, the customer's project manager was really afraid of key products being delivered late. That fear was not articulated in the RFP, but the winning proposal team knew about his fear and addressed it in the proposal. And that team won. And finally, who or what is he biased for or against? Maybe the customer wants a local firm doing the job and is biased against out-of-towners. Maybe he is biased against someone you have on your team or biased for them. Maybe he prefers one sort of solution over the other. None of this will show up in the RFP, but you can bet it's a hidden evaluation factor. The bottom line is this. When you meet the customer's needs, you are merely being compliant. When you meet their wants, you are adding value to your offer. Coming up with themes is all about distilling what you have learned about your customer's wants. And the way you begin to do this is to conduct a win strategy session. And here's how. First, you have to gather people who know this job and this customer. This group should include whoever has been leading the discussions with the customer about this opportunity. It should also include any of your team who has had face time with people in your customer's shop who might serve as evaluators. You should also set aside at least 2 hours for this first meeting and plan for at least 2 meetings. I say clear the decks for 2 hours. If you don't use all that time, so be it. But if you only schedule an hour and have to quit before you're through, you will too easily put off another session to finish up. I've seen this happen way too many times. Oh, and plan for a follow-up meeting. That's when the real work begins. Okay, in that first meeting, focus on what you know the customer wants. Keep asking yourself, what are their hidden hot buttons? What do they hope to see happen? What are they afraid of? And who or what are they biased for or against? Next, if possible, conduct the session before the RFP drops. This way, if you find any gaps in your collective understanding of what the customer wants, which you undoubtedly will, then you can still go off and talk to them. After the RFP drops, that becomes difficult, if not impossible. And finally, I strongly recommend that you conduct the session before making a final go, no-go decision. You may discover in your discussion that you don't really know enough about the customer's hidden concerns, at least not enough to win. A no-bid decision is one of the best outcomes a win strategy session can yield. If you decide you can't win, then you'll save yourself a lot of effort and resources that would otherwise go into a losing proposal. All right, now let's get down to what you do in the session. I boiled it down to 6 steps in the Win Strategy session. Step number 1, identify the key players in the customer's decision making. Who makes the final decision? Is the customer project manager in the loop? Who else will influence the decision? Who will serve on the evaluation panel? You need as many of these folks identified by name as you can possibly get. That's the only way to talk about wants. Next, for each person, list their concerns or wants or hot buttons, and then prioritize their concerns. How hot is the hot button? Not all wants are created equal. It's important to know what the customer really wants. I usually prioritize from 5 to 1, with 5 being the hottest hot button. Next, determine what you must do in the context of your offer to address their concerns. Now, all this means is that once you have determined the thing the customer wants the most, figure out how, in your approach to doing the job, you can give it to them. This means taking a look at how you would ordinarily do this work, then tweak it appropriately to make sure you are hitting the hot button. The example ahead will make this more clear. Next, identify the strengths you bring regarding this particular opportunity, and then identify the benefits those strengths bring to the customer. All right, those are the steps. Now let's take a look at an example. I start off with a clean whiteboard with 2 columns. The first column is customer concerns. It's a list of their concerns. The second is a list of what we can offer to resolve or address these concerns. Now you may recall from Winning Proposal Themes Part 1, the project I used as an example. I'll refresh your memory. The project the team was bidding on was to design a pipeline route, something they call an alignment, from a reservoir at 8,000 feet in the mountains down about 20 miles to an elevation of about 4,500 feet. Now the pipeline was going to run parallel to a state highway, and at some point it was going to tunnel underneath the state highway. It was going to run underneath a set of railroad tracks and underneath utilities, as well as underneath a pristine trout stream. Big job, complex issues. In the strategy session, I first asked the team to identify the key players in the decision loop. Then I asked them to identify what they thought, based on the conversations with these people, their hot buttons were. The first person up was the project manager, Alice Devlin. The team agreed that Alice was worried that there are hidden permits that would cause schedule delays and that the permitting process would drag on too slowly to meet the deadline. The second person was Jim Ellis, who was the customer's lead engineer. He had a couple of chief concerns. One was slope stability and the impact slope stability would have on worker safety and pipe damage. He was also worried about correct pipe size and wanted a pipe design that balanced internal hydraulic pressure stresses with external soil loads for the entire pipeline length. Finally, there was Ted DeSalle, the district manager. He turned out to be the top decision maker. He was very sensitive to the public's concern about environmental impact of routing the pipeline under the pristine trout stream known as the Sherman Fork River at Milestone 18. There were a couple of other people, but this will serve as a good example for now. Next, I asked the team to prioritize the concerns. The permitting process was very important to Alice. The team got plenty of hints from Alice about that. Slope stability issues were a big worry for Jim. The pipe size was also a concern, but not as much. And Ted was really wringing his hands over the public relations issues associated with running a pipeline under that trout stream. Once we figured these out, I asked the team to brainstorm ways we could resolve each of these worries. Eventually, we came up with this list. Pause the video and take a moment to read each and see how it could resolve the associated issue. A quick note, the solutions you see on the right are the end result of a long brainstorming session. We tried out a number of things for each, rejected most of them, and these are what we ended up with. Like everything else related to proposals, theme building is a process of revision, and revision. So now we have these hot buttons and the resolutions to them. If you have seen any of my other proposal tutorials, you'll remember my mantra on features and benefits. Features are what you offer. It's the things you will do or that your product does. Benefits are the goodies the customer gets from your feature. For Alice, permitting was the big problem. By offering her a solution that allays her fears of schedule delays, we are giving her a tailor-made benefit. As this solution shows, we have already addressed a big part of the permitting problem. Plus, we have brought Rocky Nolan on board, who's an expert in the permitting process and someone we know Alice likes and respects. The benefit: permitting will get done in time to meet the construction start deadline. When you tie what you do directly to what they want or want to avoid, you are delivering a truly customer-focused solution. But we're not quite there yet. Next, you want to list all the strengths that you bring to this project. Then you have to associate a clear and direct benefit to the customer. This is a great way to winnow out the usual bland so-called strengths that clutter most proposals. Things like, we have a strong systems integration team, or our 1,000-person firm provides us with a deep bench. If your strength does not have a clear and direct benefit to the customer based on what you know about the customer, leave it off the list. Okay, let's review the theme development process so far. First, you start by meeting with and listening to your customer, during which you learn his hot buttons. Then you conduct a strategy session where you nail down the most important hot buttons for each person in the evaluation decision loop, and then figure out what you'll offer in your proposal to directly address their concerns. Then we get to themes. But wait, you say, what's this big gap here? Well, what goes on in this step is, okay, well, maybe not quite a miracle, but sometimes you'll wish a miracle would happen. There is no handy formula for this step. The truth is that writing proposal themes is hard. That's because writing is hard in general. The proposal theme is supposed to be a pithy, succinct expression of why the customer should pick you for this job. It means picking out just the right words and putting it in just the right sentence. It means getting a sentence together that excites the reader with the promises, but doesn't bore them with too much detail. What it takes to prepare a winning proposal theme is revision, review, revision, review, and more revision. It's easy for you to say at some point, hey, this is good enough, even when you know it's not. But don't say that. Don't get to that point. Keep looking at it and keep working at it. Because weak themes are a whole lot worse than no themes at all. Let me show you what it took to put together the final theme for the proposal we wrote based on this project. The theme we'll look at is the one nearest and dearest to Alice Devlin's heart: permitting. First, we'll start with the theme checklist we used in part 1 of theme building. Next, let's look at the first draft of the theme. Now, this really doesn't pass the theme criteria. In the first place, it doesn't acknowledge the problem. Plus, it assumes evaluators all know Rocky. And the statement avoids delays is too general. The next draft was a little better, but it still didn't meet the criteria. Again, it assumes evaluators all know Rocky's track record. Plus, the benefit is alluded to but is not specific. And the discovery of a hidden permit is not really important to the theme. Finally, there's no reason to mention Alice's name. If we write the theme well enough, Alice will know it's for her. Now, the third draft was a lot better. It has a better statement of the problem. Many permits are required, and the district's concerned about that. But it's still highlighting hidden permits, and the words avoids delays loses the specificity of construction deadline. It does state that Rocky is recognized, but that's weak. Why should that matter to the evaluators? So, no, it really doesn't meet the criteria. Finally, a couple of drafts later, we got to the final. This is much stronger. The first sentence makes a promise. The next 2 paragraphs add detail at a sufficiently high level for a theme. The problem and the district's concerns are stated clearly, and the consequences of the problem, postponing construction, are clear. We understand the problem and the ramifications. Rocky's job is also clear, and it's clear that his reputation is high among the agencies that require permits. Oh, and look, we've already done some work, identified permits, and have prepared a detailed plan that the evaluator can look at in the proposal. And finally, we are clear as a bell on the benefits. You will get the permits you need by the time you need them, which will avoid delays in construction. So how does this stack up with the theme checklist? Well, yes in all categories except for the last one. As I said in the proposal themes video number 1, this by itself is not enough to show why the customer should select you over the competition, but it promises that if you fill in the blanks and show the details of this, that it could very well be one of the steps in picking you for the job. We stuck this theme, along with some other well-worked themes, into the cover letter of the proposal, which also served as the executive summary. Well, okay, that's about it for how to develop themes, so let's sum up what I talked about. What the customer needs equals the RFP requirements. Remember that. What the customer wants equals the hot buttons. When you follow the RFP requirements, you are meeting the customer's needs, and you're being compliant. You got to do that. When you develop themes based on the customer's hot buttons, you are responding to their wants, and you are preparing a customer-focused solution to their problem. When you combine the two, compliant with their needs and giving them what they want, you are on a path to writing a winning proposal. You need to conduct a win strategy session early before the RFP arrives, if possible. You need to identify key people in the customer's decision loop and figure out their hot buttons. This is the time to focus on the key decision makers. If you have been talking to the customer, you probably know who they are. Your solutions to their concerns equal themes. I can't stress this enough. This is the basic algebra of winning. Tweak your approach to the RFP requirements by making sure the customer gets what he wants. Then trumpet these as your themes, the reasons they should select you. And then finally, review and revise your themes until they give evaluators the reasons to pick you. Writing winning themes is hard, and you need to work at it. Don't let a "that's good enough" attitude prevail. If you do, it won't be good enough to win. Now, in part 3 of Winning Proposal Themes, we'll talk about how to incorporate these themes into various parts of your proposal. You can always send questions and comments via the form on the page, and don't forget to check out the rest of the videos. And until next time, happy proposaling.